Hey everyone, my name is Patrick, and thank you for joining us on Create, Post, Repeat, a podcast all about the content creation journey. Welcome to the podcast, everyone. Create, Post, Repeat. Here we are. I am Patrick, as many of you may know, and I am here with a new friend as of about 15 seconds ago. This is, and I want to say your last name. I want to say your last name correctly. Is it Nick Goodner?
Yes, that is correct. You are absolutely correct. As people know me, that is right.
Yes, as people. And it's Nick with no C. What is that all about?
My dad named me or spelled my name. I don't know, wrote my name. Yeah. He spelled my name, and it's actually a very weird spelling. It's Nikolaus. I think it's German. Okay. No, I've never really cared to look it up. I've just accepted that this is part of my life. People ask me all the time, what's up with the no C? Like, I don't know. That's just how they wrote it. I don't know what to tell you. So yeah.
That's awesome. It's very, the Klaus part, it's like very much like a Santa Claus feel. I like that. I'm into it.
In fact, you just jogged my memory on something. There was a guy once who he saw my name and he was like, that's how they spelled the original Santa Claus's name. And I'm just taking this guy's word for it because I have no idea. So the internet will probably be like, no, that's not right. But this guy's like, and he was this, guy who gave the children. And the thing that's known for him is he punched a priest because they were like engaging like human trafficking. And I was like, I would punch a priest. So that does check. That does vibe.
Well, so I am a small time struggling creator, but my full-time job, I am a worship pastor at a church. Please don't punch me.
But you should be fine. You should be fine. We're on internet. So
if you know that world, worship pastors are the ones who probably wouldn't get punched. We'd probably be hugged and asked if we are okay. So
I think I recommended a song, like a song choice. Like, hey, I have some songs that I'd like to recommend you.
Or complain to about volume. But that's a whole nother podcast. That's a whole other podcast. And you, my friend, I want to get into it because you are one of my favorite creators on Instagram.
Well, thank you.
I found you there. I started following some of your content. I don't know how I came across your feed, but you are someone who is a massive encouragement to creators. And I wanted to kind of take some time to talk to you about that and ask you a little bit about your thoughts on the creative space. But before we get there, how did you become a full-time creative, and like what was that journey like for you?
It was a messy one. Most people, they kind of have an idea of what they want to be whenever they grow up. My idea for what I wanted to be, and you can ask my parents this, is I wanted to be rich. And that's the only plan I had for life. So like, are you going to college? And I'm like, absolutely not. I am going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to, be in business. And they're like, oh, well, that's cool. And what are you going to do in the meantime? I was like, I have no idea. And so like, I was very adamant about like getting out on my own. And I started in the church space. And so when I was like 15 or 16, somewhere in there, I started working for churches as like a kids director and then a student pastor. And it's there where I started messing around with some of the creativity, some of the video, audio, stuff like that. And then I started a blog because I've always been inherently like good at writing. So I started a blog and that didn't go anywhere. It crashed within like 6 months. Then I started another one and that one also didn't go anywhere. That one crashed in like 6 months. And through this like metamorphosis, each time I'm like doing something different, I pick up a new creative skill. So like with a blog, it was writing, with like working in kids ministry was video, audio. And then like I did like a magazine where I was doing interviews and stuff. That one also failed. There's a lot of failures here. And then at that point, like I learned graphic design and then I started working for another church and I kind of got to bring them all together as like a creative director. It was like a sub 200 person church. So it wasn't like a full-time, like real creative director. It was like a little part-time, you're a creative director, but you're not really a creative director. You're a designer. And it's here where I was like, hey, I could take these skills that I've amassed so far and start doing marketing for other companies, because I've always loved marketing, and started doing it. Opened a little company. That one actually succeeded. I actually started getting clients and things like that in just the local town that we were in, and built that up. And then the church I was working for closed down, and I saw this massive need for, like, what happens to church staff whenever their church closed down? I can tell you it hurt a lot, because you lose your friends, you lose your family, you lose all those people that you're connected with. And the people you're on leadership with that are like, yeah, we're your family, they suddenly start to, like, shun you, because they don't want to live with the embarrassment of the fact that we all just lost a church because we couldn't crack at it. Like, we couldn't do it. And so I'm sitting there. I was in a new city, new town, because we just relocated for this church. And I'm like, what do other people do whenever they're in this situation? And, like, I reached out to some of the people that I knew, and they're like, yeah, we have no idea. So I was like, well,
no help.
So I was like, I got to do something about that. Like, I got to change that. And I just felt like, this righteous indignation, like, I'm going to change it. And started off with an Instagram account called Creative Church, called The Creative Church at the time. It had all the vowels and everything. And then that kind of just blew up overnight. It went from 0 followers to, I think we were in 10,000 range by the first 6 months. And then I was like, well, I better get some, like, real branding, like a website. And people always ask me, like, why does Creative Church not have the vowels? It's CRTV Church. And that's because when I went to go buy the website, someone owned the domain Creative Church and The Creative Church. And I was like, something that's real popular right now is to take out all the vowels of your name. Movement Watches was real popular then. And I was like, I should take all the vowels out of Creative. Did it. Worked really well. And then, like, within the first year, we had 60,000 followers on the account. So that really solved that community problem amongst church creatives. And I worked in doing that for about 4 years. I don't know how long I'm supposed to go. I'm just giving my whole life story here.
Yeah, I love it. I'm in.
I did that for about 4 years, and full time, I was working clients on the side, working Creative Church growth on, like, in my full time. And then I had to solve the money problem of Creative Church, which is, it makes sense. Like it's just, it's just out here growing, and it's, it has 14,000 people in the community of the Facebook community. It had 75,000, I think, at the time. I think that's where we lived off, was about 75,000. It's like, how do we solve the financial problem of this, which is, it makes no money and I'm doing it full time. Like, you got to be paid in order to do something, like, or you're going to burn out. And I did. I eventually burned out. And in that burning process, I realized there is a way to make money in a way that I don't have to charge my creatives, because at the end of the day, my whole goal in life is not to charge the people who I see as somebody who really needs the help. And so I thought to myself, how can I get people to pay for access to the creatives? I was like, well, companies aren't going to do it, because there's not a lot of companies that are advertised to church creatives, but churches are really interested in church creatives when they're hiring them. And so that's where the job board came into play. I realized that the money problem was to let the churches pay for job boards, and that way they can be part of the growth of Creative Church. They can support what we're doing to educate creatives. And then on top of that, creatives have access to get better paying jobs and healthier church communities through our job board. So that solved the money problem. And here I am today, and now I'm making a completely different switch, where I'm starting to focus more on my personal brand, and helping creatives that are in the freelance industry. Because what I've noticed is, since 2020, we've seen a massive exodus out of the church. And we can get into that a little bit, but basically what happens with church creatives is they age out. They get to a place where the church can no longer support them financially. And this is not a bad thing. I think people want to paint it as a bad thing, like churches should pay more. And I'm kind of on the fence about it. I think if the church is, buying the pastor really nice sports cars, they should probably pay their staff more. But there's some churches out there, a lot of churches out there, majority of churches out there, they're sub 500 people. They're barely getting by as it is. It can't make any economical sense for them to pay their designer market rate. But it does make economical sense for them to hire maybe junior designers, junior leaders that they can then raise up and then send out. And I see that sending out process happening right now.
You're basically like a creativity missionary. That's really interesting. Can I pause and ask you a question?
Yes, you can. Yes, I listen. I am a content creator at my heart, and if you let me talk, I will ramble for the next hour and a half. So please interject.
No, this is, you're saying some amazing things that I have so mmany questions around, because number one, you keep saying we. So is this something that, and I know that I think one of your posts once gave a bit of a critique of creatives saying we when it's really just I. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes, it is. And that's because all my posts are written to me first. So anyone who gets mad at the post, always remember it's written to me first. Like, I'm the one struggling with it. We comes from the church. Like, we always, like, anytime you get on stage, it was always we. Yeah. So like my programming to say we when I'm talking is just right there. And that does not leave me, and it's very hard. So yes, you're right. I shouldn't be saying we. It was really me.
I'm fine with it, but I'm wondering, is this really, do you have people that work with you, for you, alongside you, or is Church Creative and your personal branding stuff, is that all you?
So personal brand, things like that, that's all me. I'm the one creating content. I'm the one creating videos, all that. With Creative Church, I have a very small staff. We have about 2 people who help me out. One's the job board manager, Nikki, and then the other one's freelance.
I'm wondering how much in that growth process of these multiple accounts you've grown to success, how much were you involved in, this is how the algorithm works, and you have to post this many times a day because consistency is rewarded. In your opinion, this isn't my assumption, but in your opinion, were you like, I kind of fell backwards into success and then continued that roller coaster? Or were you actually in the analytics of Instagram content creation, hashtags, when to post, where to post, etc.?
I've found in my life that analytics only stress me out. So why would I ever look at them?
That's so frustrating, but okay.
Yes, I know. So let me say this. So as you're growing an account, you start to want to post more, no matter what the algorithm is doing, right? Like, because you're interested in getting the content that you love out to people that you want to get it out to. And that's where I kind of sit, where I'm like, I really love producing content, number one, but number two, I love helping the people that it helps. And so like, I want to get out 15 posts a week, because that's 15 opportunities to help people that I know and people maybe I've never met. Right. So I look at it that angle first. Now, to say I'm like, oh, I don't pay attention to the analytics, that's not true. I have goals just like everybody else, but I know that posting content is what gets to those goals. And I also know that I am subjected to an algorithm, and there's an algorithm that I can't control. So for me to be like in the day-to-day with it and be like, oh, well, this post got 200 likes, but this one got 500 likes. Oh, I need to do more of this. I don't do that. I more look at it as a quarter-to-quarter thing. Like, I'm looking at, is the account growing here? Yeah, it is growing here. So then what I'm doing is correct. I just need to keep doing that. But if I get in there, I'm like, okay, well, the account's not growing. What am I doing wrong? And oftentimes it just comes down to the content's not good. Like, I'm just not creating good content.
Okay, so you're creating content, and then let's just say quarterly, you're looking at the results, how it worked. What does your content calendar situation look like? Is it, if you go to the other side of the content creation, the very beginning, are you looking at okay, let me look at my year, my month, my week. I'm going to focus on these things, because I feel like, and the reason why I'm asking is, I'm still someone who I've gotten monetized on YouTube. I would by no means say I'm doing well, but that's a huge mile marker for me. Yeah. But I still find that imposter syndrome creeping in at who am I creating for? Oh, you've got to niche down, all those things. So as someone who's that's on the other side of those things, what does the planning or the pre-production process look like for you? How do you plan that out?
So, it's going to work a lot differently for me, because I'm focused on short-term content.
Okay.
So my planning process could last 5 seconds. It could last 30 minutes. It could last, a week of me just, ruminating on ideas. So for someone who's doing long form content, it's going to be completely different because they're going to actually have
Sure.
pre-production. They're going to think through like, what does my script look like? What do the visuals need to look like here? For someone like me, like last night, I sat down and I recorded 8 videos in a matter of like 2 or 3 hours. Those are going to be published next week, like literally next week. And then I'll burn through those and I'll have to do another set the week after. For things like graphic design posts, I make those in the moment. So like if I have an idea, like I want to write that down, people don't really like reading, big walls of text. So I have to like divide it up into sliders, or carousel posts. Sorry, Instagram branded them carousel posts. All the content creators like, what are sliders? They're
exactly. I was like, he means carousels. Yeah.
They're little sandwiches, or they're what I call the carousel posts. So like I divide them up into little sliders, and again, call them sliders, and make those pretty much in the moment, if not the day of. Very rarely do I make them the day before. They're very much like, I have this idea, I want to communicate this. I got about 5, 10, 15 minutes. Let me go and just put it on a slider and put it out. So that's how my content creation works. It's very much in the moment, and it's a bad habit. It should work where I have I'm at a point now where it's like, I could probably do like a whole month in like 1 week. But I still just go right back into my just old habits. Just those die so hard. So my content creation process is very much of a mess.
Well, then let me actually back up and get even a little bit more personal, if you don't mind. So what does the week look like for you? If these creative outlets are your job, what does it look like to wake up, be your own boss, be the boss of some other people, but then your day also consists of, I've got 15 minutes. Let me just throw together some really great tips, tricks, and practices for creatives. What does that look like kind of week to week? Because for me, I'm sitting here going, that sounds amazing, but I'm sure there's additional stresses that I wouldn't even think of that you come across. So what does it look like to create that way? What does it look like to be your own boss and do all those things?
So for me, the majority of money that I make is from Creative Church, and that is ran pretty much autonomously by my job board manager, Nikki. And so I do check-ins with her once a week, sometimes even once a month. And that leaves me a lot of room to do what I'm doing right now, which is this growth phase. If you would have asked me this question a year and a half ago, it would have been completely different, because I wouldn't have been trying to grow this personal brand. I would have been in the trenches of Creative Church, actually working of what people would call a normal full-time schedule. Right now, it's basically wake up, create content, make posts, get on social media, check in with Nikki occasionally, and then get back to work on what it is I want to do with this brand, right? So that's where you're probably hearing the free flow. Oh, that sounds so nice.
Right.
That's because I'm in a completely different season right now. I'm in a figuring it out season. I'm in an experimental season. And I had this season when I first started Creative Church too, with just maybe a year and a half of, I got to figure out what works for the people that I'm trying to reach. I got to figure out what I need to say. I need to learn a lot. So I'm reading a lot of books, watching a lot of YouTube right now, because I have to understand what I'm doing and why I'm communicating it and who I'm trying to reach and what's beneficial to them. So I'm doing a ton of research right now too. So it sounds free flowing, and that's because the work that I'm doing doesn't actually make me money. The work that makes me money is something that someone else runs autonomously for me, right? So,
but to be clear, that person is running it autonomously because of the time, effort you put into previously cultivate. You essentially created a business. So I don't. You keep saying someone runs it for you, but because you created the business. Let's just
That was 6 or 7 years of thank you. That was 6 or 7 years of work to get to that point. And that's kind of I started off saying I wanted to be rich. That was the idea of I want to create businesses, right? And I want to move into new businesses. So this idea of serial entrepreneur didn't exist whenever I was 15 years old. So I didn't have a way to tell people, but that's kind of what I've done here is I've created a business. I'm letting that business run. It's flourishing. And now I'm moving on to a new form of business that I want to do. And eventually I'll get this up and running, flourishing. Because it is a personal brand, there'll always be me running it, but I'll probably use it and I'll leverage it to open and run another business.
That's amazing. And why Instagram? Why did you gravitate to Instagram? Because as far as I know, you're not massively involved on the YouTube, TikTok, any other platform. Why Instagram for you?
Because it worked. So in 2015, when I started, it popped off and then that was the platform for me. Like, that's it, and to your point, I want to get out of it because I see where it's like kind of declining in attention. I see where it's declining in views and likes and all that other stuff. But moving an audience from one platform to the next and then growing on another platform does take a lot of time. And I think a lot of people just assume that it takes, 6 months to grow to 100,000 followers because you see a lot of carousels that say that, or you see a lot of TikToks that say, oh, I grew my account, 100,000 followers. And even in like the first year of Creative Church, we grew 100,000 followers, or not 100,000, about 60,000 followers. And that's very, very rare. You have to be hitting the platform at the right time. You have to be hitting with your content at the right time. And you have to have people who are really excited about like the movement you're creating, right?
Yeah.
So to make that jump from like 0 to 100, that's very difficult to do. Most of content creation is going to take between 1 to 4 years, like to get to a place where it's stable. And if you start looking in that long-term space, that's where it becomes a lot easier than to like put the pressure on of like, oh, I've got to be at, 50,000 followers, tomorrow or next month. And that's frustrating because you're going to stress yourself out because in a lot of ways it's impossible. You're fighting against algorithms. You're fighting against people's attention, which is very finicky. You're fighting against just the relevance. Sometimes you put something out and it's just not as relevant as you would hope to be. So now you got to learn, adjust, and then come back. So there's a lot of things that you're competing with that no matter what people say, sometimes you just can't hack those things. And sometimes all it takes is time and consistency of posting to actually get to where you want to go.
That's amazing. I have a friend. The first interview I ever did on this podcast was my friend Tyler. And I remember the day he came to me and he said, I'm going to get serious about Instagram. He created an account called Tidy Dad. He got super obsessed with the Marie Kondo tidying up, that whole revolution. And it was about 5-ish years where I texted him and I said, dude, you're at like 400,000 followers now. He said, yep. And I said, yep. It seems like it just happened overnight. And he looks back and he goes, you have to remember, I've done this for 4.5 years.
Yes, it's the old Ray Kroc saying. It's Ray Kroc, the guy who ran McDonald's, one of my favorite reads of all time. I'm an overnight success, 40 years in the making, right? Like everyone sees the following. They're like, oh my God, you did it. Like, how'd you do it overnight? And it's like, well, it took me 10 years, but you didn't see that.
And that's the interesting place I find myself in. So I've got about 2,300 subscribers on YouTube, not a small thing, but a small thing, and my son, I have 3 sons, my 3 sons, I just realized that. Okay. My 15-year-old gets COVID for the second time and we're all vaxxed and everything. And it was so bad. And we were just like, because we're fine, but he needed to, be in his room for a few days. Right. He goes in his room and just starts, and he loves YouTube, just starts posting shorts. Spent that time and posted probably like 50-ish shorts. Went from about 400 subscribers to 13,000. Because it just so happened, it was right then when YouTube was saying post shorts, post shorts, post shorts, post shorts. Now he doesn't have the views, the watch hours. He doesn't have the views he needs, but he's now my guru on YouTube because he had the time to sit there and do the thing. And now he's got to do the work of having all those subscribers, but moving it into a He's got to take the next few years to make it actually where he can make money and then make that money profitable. It's just an interesting, it's an interesting space to be. There's so much of the hurry up and wait.
And that's the thing, like with anything, even if you get 100,000 followers, it'll probably still take you a year and a half to really monetize that to where it's a good cash flow for you to, quit your job or, do something else. Like that was with Creative Church. That was the case with the Creative Church. We had 60,000 followers first year. I can't remember. Again, I'm really bad at math and numbers. $60,000 followers the first year. And then it took another 4 years after that to come up with a way to actually monetize it. And then another 3 years after that to actually get it to a place where it's like, okay, well, this is, going good enough. I can now focus my attention on something else. And up until a year and a half ago, I was still running all of that. So I was the one posting jobs. I was the one doing all that. Like Nikki is a fresh hire. So like bringing her on has only been a year in the process for doing this. And like now she's the one who kind of automates everything, keeps things flowing while I can go and focus on this. So, and Creative Church has been around for almost 9 years now. Sorry, 7 years, almost 7 years. So that's 7 years of a process to get the business to a place where I can step away from it. Right.
Yeah. There are people that are probably finding creators like a Casey Neistat right now and going, man, this new guy who's fresh on the scene, I find that so much with content creation. Yeah. Who is this? What is this new YouTuber?
Right.
So let me ask you this then. What's your word of warning, encouragement to people who are hearing the dozen people that will listen to this? One of those 12 says, well, I'm going to be a content creator. Is your word, do you go, it's too saturated? Or are you like, dude, get in the water's warm? I have my own thoughts, but what do you think?
To your saturation point, I do think it depends on what content creation fields you're getting into. So I'm assuming that once I share this, people will go and who are creatives that will watch it. I think if you're getting into the business right now to like DIY creativity, like, oh, here's your aperture settings for video, I think that is way too saturated. Like we've gotten to a place where that is insanely, like I can throw a rock and hit a creator who's making creative content on how to do something. And I think that process, oh, sorry.
No, it's good. It's good. I love it.
Apologize. I think that process is like, again, now I'm going to stumble over my words because I feel like I've offended you.
No, you're good. You're good.
But I think that process of like how to, that's getting to a point where we've hit a critical mass. And with AI, we've hit such a critical mass on it that it's also becoming irrelevant, right? Like we're getting to a place where I can Google it faster because most of the data, most of the information already exists. Yeah. So I think that market might be oversaturated, but I think there are opportunities to take that same concept of like how to and apply it to realtors, right? Like realtors need content.
Yes.
They need to know some creative skills. So why not us take our, how-tos and instead of making it for other creatives, make it for the realtors who are going to be running and gunning, who need to put out content to market themselves, like make it for them. So it's taking that same concept and applying it to a different personality type, a different niche, right? A different industry. There are people out there that I follow who create amazing content. They create really good info. They have really great information, but they're trying to reach other creatives. And maybe it's because they've been inspired by people like Peter McKinnon or people like, I can't remember the other guy. I'm really, really bad at names. I can see his face. He has a little beard and blonde hair. Not me, not someone different. A different YouTuber. He focused on like photography and creative. They see those people and they're inspired by them and they think, well, I got to do that too. But what they're missing, the opportunity that they're missing is I can make a lot more money. I can be a lot more stable because here's the thing about content creation. Content creation is fun until you got to pay your bills. It's fun to sit in front of the camera until you got to pay your bills. That's whenever content creation becomes very stressful. So you always have to think to yourself, when I'm becoming a content creator, how does this make me money? How does this transform into a business, right? We can't just be dependent on views because views do not pay the rent. And
Totally.
we have to come into it with, how do we make this a business? And the content creators who succeed are the ones who think, my content creation is my business. And so whenever you're thinking through that, it's important, you might have a lot of really great technical knowledge, but instead of applying that to an industry that's oversaturated like creatives, we already know all that information, apply it to someone who you think might need it, who's up and coming. Realtors are a good example because they're in my feed constantly. And I'm like, oh, you guys can do so much better. And then there are some realtors who really pop off who are doing great things, and they could benefit from that creative information if a creative would go out and try to reach them.
The how-to space is saturated, and it's something you're speaking to the choir here. I am every single day going, I know someone just made this video. I think I can do it better in a way. Yep. But then I do find that place where I'm like, but if I could just niche it down a bit further, I will be more successful, because I'll be the one to say that, I do this because I'm having a great time, but I want to create something that becomes a business. I want to view that. I view this as a business and a great conversation, but as a business. And I want it, and I'm always looking for that. I love what you said, because it's taking the next step towards actually making this a business instead of just viewing it as such. Does that make any sense?
It does. And I think it's because we, as content creators, we're hoping to go viral. That's the deep, I'll say that's my deep-seated desire. At the end of the day, it's to get attention. And I think we got to be honest with ourselves and admit that, our deep desire is to get attention doing this because we want that. And I don't think that's a problem. I know some creators, I love it whenever I see content creators I can't believe you all have followed me. I can't believe this is working. I can't believe, all thank you for your support. And it's okay, that's false, because I know for a fact you sat down and had the conversation with yourself. I want to do this because I need people's support. It's not that I'm ungrateful for people supporting me. I love that people support me. But I saw this coming because I saw it way before you did, because that was the dream for my life, right? I've always wanted to see this fulfilled. And so it doesn't surprise me that you're following me, because I had the vision long before you even were here. But I am very grateful that you're here, because now we can actually get to real work.
I was going to say, don't pretend like you haven't sat down and been I'm making a list of how to get more of these viewers. And then you're making the video going, I can't believe you're here.
I can't believe you're here. Thank you so much. Again, be grateful for your audience, because, they're the ones who eventually will support you enough to hopefully pay your bills. But I'm not saying not be grateful for your audience, but I am saying don't lie to your audience. You wanted them here. You had an idea that this would happen. It's not a surprise. Certainly not a surprise. But to your point of making it a business, we live in this ethereal of we are going to get views, and that's it. That's all I need is views, right? I just need likes, views, comments. I think more content creators would benefit from thinking long-term and saying, 2 years from now, whenever I have the views, what is it that I'm going to be doing to make money off of this, right? As a content creator. But
can you talk a bit, can you actually dig into that? Pretend we're all in a room and we've just asked you, well, hey, listen, I've got 100,000 subscribers, 100,000 followers, whatever the magic number is. Yeah. You're saying, okay, guys, your next step is what?
And then everyone would get mad at me because I'd go, it depends. So essentially, at the end of the day, there's two different types of content creators. There's people who will be courses, coach, thought leaders, content creators. So your Simon Sinek's, your Gary V's, your Brene Brown's. Those are course creator, content creator types, right? So their next step is to sell education. However they can do that, sell community, sell access to their content. All right, that's their next step. Or get brand deals that kind of support that. With a content creation business, side note, with a content creative business, anytime you're creating content, it's going to be a matter of building revenue streams to support what you're doing. It's never going to be a one thing deal. because you can't live off of one thing deal as a content creator. Like I said, you're thinking of it as a business, so you got to think of each and every single thing as a product and a revenue stream. So yes, there's ads, but what else can there be? Can there be courses? Right. Can there be coaching? All that other good stuff. So for education content creators, their next step is going to be selling their content, however that looks for them. Then there's another group of people, entertainment content creators. Those are your Mr. Beast types. Those are the people who are creating purely on entertainment. Their next step is to find out how to be entertaining and have brands pay them money to be entertaining. Or taking the Mr. Beast concept, creating your own products as an entertainer that you can sell. I love the fact that when Mr. Beast, Mr. Beast had t-shirts, right? But he also launched like candy bars, Mr. Beast burger. Like he's thinking beyond like, oh, let me sell t-shirts, let me sell stickers, to almost what would be funny if I sold, right? Like that's, what would be so weird that I'm selling it. And it's like, oh, why does Mr. Beast have a burger? And there's a whole interesting like breakdown of like how the Mr. Beast burger works that I love. And it's on YouTube. You can search it. It's like Mr. Beast Ghost Kitchen Burger, something YouTube. I don't know. But it's very interesting how he made that happen. But yeah, so your step as like an entertainment content creator is figuring out how you can create and get people to continue entertaining people while you're getting paid to do that. And that's going to come in the form of a lot of products and brand deals that are going to come from you personally. You're not going to be trying to sell education. I did see one comedian years ago. He got really popular and then like pivoted to like coursing and coaching for other comedians. That did not go well for him. So if you build your brand on education or excuse me, on entertainment, I think it's really important to know that you need to stick with entertainment. Like you don't need to be like, oh, and now I'm going to pivot to course creation, unless you're just willing to abandon that audience completely and go and search for a completely new audience.
Interesting. That's really good. I'm learning a lot. And I think, again, the dozen people that listen to this are going to learn a lot as well. Well, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but there's so much someone who's growing like me, who's like looking at someone you that's like looking at someone like you going, yes, for me, what you've done is a dream. You've created a business. Yeah. You've in some ways passed off, but are still, involved. And now you're on to creating different things. And your pattern has been successful. The things you're creating with, they're not stagnant, they're growing. So someone like me watches your content. Someone like me watches the Think Media content, listens to what Gary Vee says. And all of a sudden I'm like, maybe I could sell wine. No, I couldn't. I couldn't do that. But
you might, I don't know.
Yeah, you might. Yeah. In these spaces, you do hear the same things over and over again. Would you, and maybe you would look right back at me and say, yeah, because they work. But what would you say to you were given the opportunity to someone who is saying, like you, Nick, I want to start on Instagram or what have you. What would you say to someone who is just getting started?
Sorry, my lights went out. I was like, what the heck just happened? It got dark all of a sudden. Like one of the lights died. This is, of course, real quick. A side note for everyone listening: always buy things that are not battery powered whenever you're doing videos.
Yes.
Lesson learned. They're great lights, but they are battery powered and they do die. And I apologize for that.
And we're not going to say their name because what if they do want to sponsor us and we're totally in? We're totally in.
Okay, real quick. If they do sponsor you, they're great because they do have an option to be non-battery powered, but this idiot has not yet bought the cords to do that. So it's not them, it's me.
I get it.
So, okay, real quick, back up. Ask me that question again because I completely derailed.
No worries. You're sitting in a room. We've all heard the advice. Consistency is rewarded. Subscribers don't matter. Yeah. It's all about who are you reaching. We've all heard the advice from great creators, the Gary Vees, the Think Medias. What would you say to someone who burst into the door right now and said, I want to start on Instagram. 2023. What do I do? What is your what's your playbook that you'd give them? Advice you'd give them, or even warnings you'd give them?
I would say first off, no shade to those content creators, but
of course,
it's very easy to say subscribers don't matter whenever you have a lot of subscribers. So the fact that you're feeling like stressed about like no growth, that is stressful. Like, and I understand that. So that's the first thing I'd say is like, don't feel bad for feeling stressed, because these people who are talking, they're talking from the peak. And that's the thing I look at, like whenever I'm looking at any content creator, even like when you're looking at my content, at some point, at some level, I'm talking from a place of privilege. I'm talking from a peak. And that doesn't always help people or communicate well with people who are in the trenches and they're just getting started. So the first thing I'd say is take everything I say with a grain of salt, because again, I'm talking from a peak and you're right down here. You're feeling completely different feelings than I felt or feel right now. And I probably felt some of those feelings, but revisionist history in my mind is like, oh no, it was all perfect all the time. And I was all cool, you know, like, it was great. You know, I was just growing, and every day I was posting videos and like 100,000 people were like, it was nothing, you know? And so I understand, first of all, I recognize that privilege. I recognize like where I am coming from. So first off, take everything anyone ever says as a grain of salt, because they're not where you're at. They're in a completely different place than you. The second thing I'd say is they're right on consistency. But what I see a lot of times with a lot of these creators is consistency equals growth. And it does, just not the growth that you're thinking. Consistency equals growth in your ability to create good content, not in your ability to gain followers. So if you publish twice a day, which I recommend people who want to be in content creation do, because number one, eventually you're going to be publishing more than twice a day. And number two, you need to learn how to get in and like be a content creator. Side note, there is a content creator called a quality content creator. They don't have to post twice a day, but that's a completely different scenario. I'm just talking about quantity content creators who are short form, not really long form. So the first thing you need to do is start to learn how to post twice a day. This is not because you're going to gain 100,000 followers over the next year. You might, but that's not the reason why you're posting. You're posting because you want to get consistently better in the way you create content, in the way that you are putting yourself out there, because content creation is putting yourself out there. It is putting your personality, it's putting who you are, it's putting yourself out there, and you got to get comfortable with that. The only way I've found to get comfortable with something is by doing it frequently. So eventually you get to a place where I'm posting twice a day and I've been doing it for a year. I'm not growing. That's probably what's holding you back from doing it another year. Because if you did it another year, you'd take all the stuff that you learned from that first year and you'd apply it, and you probably would see the growth. That's where I see a lot of creators get to. They get to that 6-month period and they go, I'm not growing, I'm going to quit. I'm not doing it. I'm not growing. And that's what you have to break through. That's the mentality you have to break through. That's where you have to say, yeah, I'm not growing follower wise, but how did I grow as a person? How did I grow as a creator? Like, and I really like to compare like stuff I made week 1 and stuff I made week 52, right? Because they're so dramatically different. Like if you go look at my Instagram feed right now, I told you I was like in a experimental phase. Stuff I was posting in January looks completely different than the stuff I posted today. And that's because I'm learning, okay, well, first off, if I'm doing a carousel, if I'm doing a slider, that content can't always be dense. Like it has to be short bites. So like I learned to shorten it up. I learned to make it big, bold text so that you can see it whenever you're scrolling through the feed. Like I learned these things, okay? Now I've only grown 200 followers since January, but my content is getting so much better. Even if you look at like my video content that I started 2 weeks ago, even it's getting better incrementally. So as a creator, you have to understand that posting every day consistently isn't growth for followers, it's growth for you as a person, as you as a content creator. So that's what I would suggest is, yes, listen to the consistency, but stop placing the consistency as this equals an audience. What it equals is you getting better at the craft.
That's really interesting. And hopefully this is encouraging to you. I noticed when Nick started to post differently on Instagram. And I noticed when you started doing more of the video stuff, and I was like, oh, here we go. All right. And, you know, like most people, and it's been fun to watch you as a creator who has been and is successful, dip your toe into some stuff that you can tell you're trying some different things.
Right.
I'm not, you know, I'm not blowing smoke or anything. I know even you said, oh, I needed to make my text bigger. I noticed that. I was like, oh, he's starting to use some, you know, these fonts are increasing in size. And then you started to do like some of the video stuff. And I was like, this guy is not bad on camera. This is great. So for someone who like follows your stuff and already appreciates your stuff, I noticed, I affirm you, and you're doing a great job. I also, I loved how, I love the one difference between what you shared and, you know, again, no shade to other creators. I agree with you. A lot of times, and listen, we're working with 30-second clips. We're trying to keep people's attention.
Yes.
Maybe they also give the whole like, listen, I had to grow into this diatribe. But most of the clips that come out are, well, they're first things first. If you're not doing this, you're failing. To have one thing I love about longer form content is you do get to experience that, dude. I'm in a privileged space. Like it's easier for me to say this. I appreciate that as well. I just think that's very self-aware, and more people need to hear that, because I think there are a lot of creators, myself included, out there going, well, if I post 3 times a day, I'm going to get 100 followers in the next couple of months. It's going to be great. And that just simply isn't, based on what you said, isn't the case. And that's really, really helpful.
It's funny because there's also creators who will post 3 times a day and they will get 100,000 followers. So Nick doesn't know what he's talking about. And to that, I say, you just got lucky. Like that's all that happened is you played the lottery and you got lucky. Okay. But what I'm playing is the stock market, and the stock market is about growing and learning over time, because whenever you hit the lottery, most lottery winners lose it within the first 5 years of being in the lottery, whereas most people retire off their stock portfolio. Okay. So you might hit and get lucky, but if you're constantly investing to figure out what's working, why it's working, how I'm growing, why it's growing, why it's not growing, those questions as a content creator, and how am I growing myself, and not really focusing on like the audience growth, how am I growing myself? There's the other light. Again, my fault, not theirs.
You look great. You look great.
Thank you. And now it just got really dark. Like we just went like from like bright background to very dark. How am I growing myself? That's the long tail investing. That's the long game. Again, you might hit, you might get lucky. I certainly did. I got lucky with my first Instagram account, but this second time going around and doing it for myself, I've noticed it's been a lot harder, because I'm learning completely new skills. Whenever I started in 2015, all you had to do was put the Nashville filter on a photo and you're good. Now I got to learn. Now I got to learn how to be on video, relearn how to be on video. You know, I was good at it one time, but I hadn't done it for 8 years. You know, so now I got to relearn, how do I do this? How's the camera set up? And then video gear changes so dramatically, and programs change all the time. And so you got to learn all this stuff. So I think, so one, it's investing long-term, it's investing long tail. And then 2, it is really being self-aware enough to know this is how I'm growing. This is what I want to grow into. This is, you know, I say this a lot. I have a responsibility to make my dreams work. And part of that responsibility means taking in new information and changing some, maybe even core fundamental beliefs in me, because I want to change and I want to continue growing. There's always going to be, it's real popular in our church space right now to talk about deconstructing. And I think people look at that as like a one-time deal. Like, we're going to deconstruct and then that's going to be over and I'm going to be good. Deconstruction is a lifetime process. Reconstruction is a lifetime process. You're constantly going to be doing these things in order to understand how the world works, understand how you work, understand why you do the things that you do. like that's a constant learning game. It's a constant learning game with your content creation too.
I'm sorry, Nick. I didn't know that we were preaching sermons on.
That's the church in me.
I love it. I love it. That's so good. Well, I know we're coming close on to time here, but I did want to ask you that all of this has been so helpful. But I did want to ask you before you go, as a former employee at Pecos Bill Tall Tale Inn and Cafe, I wanted to know if you were comfortable with the term Disney adult.
No, I resent that. No, I don't mind. You really were? You worked at Pecos?
Yeah, dude.
Why don't you tell me this? When did you work there?
Well, first of all, let me answer the first question. Because I'm a great host, and I wanted to save a shock for the end.
Yes, you should.
No, I was right out of like high school. I was like, I went to like a semester of community college, Valencia. Stay close, go far.
Oh my God! Yeah, I know where Valencia is. We live right down the road from it. Yeah.
What is it? Stay close, go far. Valencia, a better place to start. Was there other?
Yes, they're still using that marketing, by the way.
Yes, or finish, because I only went to one semester there and never went back. Okay, so and my mom's like, well, if you're not going to go to school, you got to get a job, and dude, this makes me sound like such a terrible loser kid. She lined me up an interview at Disney, like a group interview and this is before like everything was online. I mean, I'm using MapQuest to get to the interview, like in my Jeep Cherokee. Got lost, missed the interview, had to schedule another one. Let's move on. But yes, got hired at Pecos Bill Tall Tale Inn and Cafe in the Magic Kingdom. And so as I see you post about Disney, I grew up in Florida for 20 years. I'm just like, oh my gosh, brother.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, I worked at Discovery Church.
Did you grow up in?
I worked at Discovery Church. I was in I know where that's Orlando.
Okay, East Orlando. So I'm in I was right South Orlando. Yeah. Yeah,
I was right by Discovery, is where I lived.
Okay. So first off, I did not know that. You should have led with that. This would have been a completely different interview.
No, I'm saving it for next week.
We're going to completely deep dive on Orlando and Disney.
See, that's the second episode, bro.
Right. Yeah. That you're going to have to cut this because we're going to talk in here for the next hour.
You're over here playing the short game. I'm in the stock market of podcasting.
Stock market. That's good. I wanted to set that. Actually, I need to write that down because that's actually a really good thing that I said. That just came to me while we were talking.
I liked it. I loved it.
Anyway. So I worked, what years did you work there? Because I worked at Disney too.
Dude, I don't remember. 2, 3, no. I'm sorry. This was before I graduated. So I was like 16 or 17. So like 2002 or 3 area.
Okay. So I was.
No, I'm sorry. I'm wrong again. No. Like 98, 2000, something around there. Yeah.
See, I remember my 3 months at Disney vividly. First off, similar to you, I got lost trying to figure out where to go to for the interview because it's not clear at all. Disney might be great at making magic, but you would need magic to get to an interview spot there because I showed up at 2 of the wrong buildings, and they're like, "Oh, that's not where your interview's at," and I'm like, "Well, where's it at?" And they're like, "We'll go down here, blah 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 blah." So I went there, and they're like, "Who told you that?" No, they're wrong. Your interview's going to be over here. I was like, oh my God. So I'm driving all over the Disney campus. And for people who have been to Walt Disney World, it's a big campus. It's huge. Oh,
acres and acres.
And so I'm ping-ponging back and forth to find out where I'm going for this interview. Yeah. So I finally get there. I'm stressed. And Disney interviewing, first off, you go into a room, I don't know how it was for you in 2003, but you go in and it's like you're in an airport or a bus station.
Yep.
And there's 30, 40, 50 people there with you, and they're all interviewing because they're hiring, 40,000 cast members a year, right?
Masses.
So it's not like your typical interview. And so finally your name comes up on a screen. That is how you go to the receptionist and they check you in and they bring you back to interview, and then it's over in 15 minutes and they hire you because if you have a great smile, you're in, they don't care. No criminal history and a smile and you're at Disney. So I was hired for the Backlot Tour, which for Disney adults, they'll know the Backlot Tour was something that ran from 1980 to 2014-ish before they destroyed it all and built Star Wars Land and Pixar or Toy Story Land. So I was the tram operator for the Backlot Tour, and I wrecked a tram within 2.5 months of being there. And they had to cause the 600 person evacuation. Okay. They had to close my attraction for the rest of the day. And then you should have seen the look on these Disney employees' faces whenever I drove the tram. Like once they got it like picked back off the curb, because when I say I wrecked a tram, I ran it up on a curb. Okay. So they pull it off the curb, and then I drive back around, and the Disney managers are like freaking out because I'm not supposed to be doing that because I was the one who wrecked the tram. So then, just as we'll talk about my firing story, just in a magical whirlwind of events, I'm there until 3:00 in the morning because they had changed the radio system, and you had to get a drug test before you left property to make sure you weren't like on drugs, and that's why you wrecked the tram. So I'm there until 3 a.m. with 2 other managers, and my phone dies, and my girlfriend at the time, we were supposed to go on our first date, and my phone dies, and I can't let her know that I'm not going to be there. And so the last thing I text her is like, because we were both down here in Orlando to help a church plan, I'm like, just go up to the church and stay in the office until I get there. Okay. And that was at like 9:00 at night, and now it's like 3:00 in the morning. And
she thinks you've disappeared or something.
I had no idea what she thought. So we're in there. I'm 3:00 in the morning. Finally get a drug test at 3:00 in the morning. The doctor is pulled out of bed to drug test me, and they have like a Disney facility, like I don't know if you know this, they have a hospital at Disney. And so I'm getting drug tested, and I look at the doctor and I go, this happened at 3:00 this afternoon. If I were on drugs, they'd probably be out of my system by now. And he said, I want to pretend like you didn't say that, because then that's going to require a blood test, and we're not doing that tonight. And so they leave me on for a week because I had a full schedule. So they leave me on for a week, and they're like, they call me back like everything's fine. They literally call me back like everything's fine. So I show up in my uniform that day for work, and everyone's looking at me like dead man walking. What the hell are you doing back here?
Yeah, what are you doing?
Like my ticket system, because again, Disney has a weird system. They like it prints off a ticket and tells you where you need to go. It prints it off and says, go back to the bungalow. Went back to the bungalow. That's where they fired me. So my Disney experience was literally a 3-month period, and I got fired at the end for wrecking a tram.
Oh no. That's unbelievable. I have to say, as we kind of wrap up here, because I want to respect your time, I pulled a sneaky on you. This is my second shock of the episode. You may not remember this because you're a huge deal on Instagram. I asked you to do a podcast months ago. Months.
Yes.
When I first started this idea, I think you're going to remember this. And you were like, everybody asked me to do a podcast. This is how I read it. This isn't how you wrote it. Everybody asked me to do podcasts. And I rarely do them. And I went, okay, hey, I shot my shot. Over. Then on one of your Q&As on Instagram, you posted, I very often get asked to do podcasts. I won't do them unless the invitee does these things. I screenshot that. I sent it to you and then said, here are those things. Will you please do a podcast with me? And you went, gotcha. You got it, buddy. And you came on. So I'm so thankful for that. But speaking of Instagram and all of that and connecting with you, before we get out of here, one thing I've been loving is your new newsletter. If you're emailing this,
yes.
Where do you want people? How can people? You've shared so much great information. How can people follow your stuff, connect with you, keep up to date with what you're doing?
I think that newsletter is probably going to be the best way to do it. The Creative Brief by Nick Goodner, and because it's going to have everything like where to follow me and everything in it, and it's also once a week. very well researched, if I do say so myself.
Yeah.
As the writer of it, very well researched content. Like I'm spending 8-9 hours just on this one thing a week, because I want to get it right. I want to make sure it's the best information that you can have as a creative to really grow your business and help you see like that future more clearly and really future proof yourself as a creative, as everything's always changing, right? We talked about it a little earlier, like programs, things, they all change. It's not your typical how to make this trend happen. It's really focusing in on that business money-making aspect. And that's whether you're looking for a dream job, like you want a career in this, like you want to go to work 9 to 5, or if you want to be a business owner, you want to have a client, you want to have a customer base. It's for both of those types of creatives. So yeah, it's a creative brief, nickgoodner.com, NIKGOODNER. And I want to say, to your point, you read my first DM. Yes. No, that's exactly how it sounds. I'm not even going to defend myself.
I love it.
Because I am snarky, but I think like my heart, hear my heart in this. It's literally an energy protection, because like people, a lot of times people ask, and it's through Creative Church, and a lot of people don't ask like the brand that I'm building right now, but a lot of people ask through Creative Church. It's probably 4 or 5 weeks or 4 or 5 interviews every month, and that they request. And it's like, here's the stipulations. I don't do those very often. And it's just basically, it was just a kit letter that you got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boundaries.
So I apologize if I came off like I'm snarky, I'm better than everybody. It's literally like, I don't do this very often, because again, like up until here recently, I didn't like being on camera. And then I started doing it. I was like, oh, this is way easier than designing things.
To be honest, I took it as a massive learning experience. No smoke. I'm serious.
No.
There have been 2 people I've asked for interviews from, you being one, another, who have responded to me that taught me lessons.
Good.
Ever since I asked you to do an interview and you said, no.
Yeah.
And then I saw you post, I don't do this unless this. There is now your prepackaged response to me is now my opener.
Perfect.
So what I do when asking for your interview, I'm actually making a YouTube video about this, is if I nail an interview with a content creator I respect, for instance, my buddy Tidy Dad, 400,000 followers on Instagram. Well, I then went to his Instagram, see who is following him, look for that blue check mark in the realm of conversation that I want to have. And 4 or 5 people, I reached out to them. Here is my interview with Tidy Dad. I would love to have a similar conversation with you. I'd love to work around your schedule. I'm shooting my shot. I expect nothing from you, but hopefully a yes. And one of them responded. So I'm getting a 20% return. But what that used to be was, hey, if you don't mind, Yeah. And so for me, you're here going, sorry if it was snarky. That was a learning experience for me. And that's perfect. What I love about the content creation field. That's what I love. And I actually just made a video. I made a video about this recently as well. The content creation field, in my experience, is warm.
Yeah.
In general, creators will either very kindly say no, or they'll give you a warm. It's usually people want to help in this field. We can have a whole episode about that. I love that, including me. That's what this field is about. It's about helping others. That's how you succeed. So that's my answer to, sorry if I was snarky. Nope, I learned my lesson, and I'm so thankful for your time today, man.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. At least whenever I started doing interviews, like this is years ago, my worst response was somebody who, if I said their name, everyone know them, was like, no, your podcast isn't big enough for me. And I was like, at the time we were doing, I think, 30,000 listeners. I was like, how big do you want a podcast to be? Like, I was like, this was Creative Church podcast, so it's a completely different like field that we were in. And so like we had a lot of people listen to that show, and I was like, how big does he want like a podcast to be? And like ever since then, I've had a super bad taste. Like every time I see his stuff, because I'll see his stuff, and I'm like, oh, that's the guy who said no to me because he was too big for me.
Well, I guess
Don't be that guy. Don't be that guy. I guess
the perfect ending for our episode today is to realize that, hey, reach out to me, everybody. I'm not too big for anyone. Create, post, repeat.
Hey, as soon as you do that, you'll start getting a ton of them, and then you'll have to make your own kit response of, hey, no, I don't do this.
Yeah, well, actually, at this point, I'd be like, yes, please, anyone. That would be amazing. Hey, it's been a real treat to talk to you. I think we need to have another episode all about Disney.
Yes,
I'm putting it out there.
No,
I'd love to have another conversation with you in the future if you'd be open to it. I want everybody to go out and follow your stuff because it's been super helpful for me, and I'm super thankful for your time today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome, buddy.
Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget that links to everything you need can be found down in the description. And if you want to stay up to date with what I'm doing, you can always follow me on Instagram by subscribing to @PatrickMurphy. And while we're talking about subscribing, go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel as well. I'll see you in the next one. But don't forget, before you go, you should probably watch this video.